Virus spreads. COVID-19 cases in the southern city of Kaohsiung break a 5-month streak of zero infections. Winter of discontent. A send-off for Taiwan's Olympians as Beijing warns all athletes not to mention human rights. Delicate diplomacy. Antony Blinken warns of a Russian troop buildup in a crucial visit to Ukraine. Haircuts in music halls and manicures in art galleries. Artists in the Netherlands find creative ways to protest COVID restrictions. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. COVID-19 has spread to Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan after 5 months of zero cases in the city. Authorities confirmed 3 local cases there on Thursday. Earlier in the morning, officials closed down a kindergarten for disinfection and testing of 80 people. With the virus spreading in Taiwan, health officials are preparing to launch a digital COVID-19 vaccine passport for local use starting on Friday. Once the passports go into use, adult entertainment venues will require all staff and visitors to be fully vaccinated. The increase in local COVID cases in Taiwan has also led to rising demand for vaccines. To date, 80% of the country's population has received 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, while 72% are fully vaccinated. About 11% of the population has gotten a booster shot. Taiwan on Thursday bid farewell to its first Olympic delegation heading to the Beijing Games. It included coaches and medical staff. The event kicks off in 2 weeks, but has already drawn controversy over China's human rights record. Now athletes are being warned to watch what they say. Bing Wang reports.
Presiding over Taiwan's flag ceremony for the country's Winter Olympic athletes, the president of Taiwan's Olympic Committee marks a milestone achievement.
滑雪的部分，那我们这次有男选手、女选手都取得了参赛资格。这个在过去的历史上，今天也是第一次。
4 Taiwanese athletes have qualified for the Games, with 2 more waiting for confirmation. While there are concerns of a COVID outbreak in China, an Olympics bubble with strict measures have been formed. Such measures include this robot that delivers food to your table. But there's another cause for concern. World governments are warning their athletes to not comment on China's human rights issues.
So there's really not much protection that we believe that's going to be afforded to athletes. And the IOC has not come out proactively to indicate that we will protect and make sure everyone is safe that decides to speak up.
It appears Taiwan will follow suit.
基本上，就是维持呢，这个保持中立的这样子的一个立场政府的部分不要来干涉跟介入所以我们也期待我们的一个选手那么能够呢保持这样子的一个态度。
Several countries, including the United States, United Kingdom, Lithuania, Belgium, and Canada, have announced a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics, citing China's human rights record. Some former athletes say the Winter Olympics offer not just a large stage for sports, but a bully pulpit to voice concerns.
Brave athletes want to speak out. Brave and all athletes have a right. Many athletes feel they have a responsibility and they have every right to be speaking out whenever it is that they're competing. Why? Is because the world faces so many global challenges right now that no industry is immune. No one on the planet is immune to having to do our part, each of us, to support these issues.
With medals to be won and Chinese officials stifling any discontent, all eyes will be on the athletes for more than just their performance on field. Alex Chen and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
US President Joe Biden is marking his first year in office amid surging COVID cases and inflation and plummeting approval ratings. A Gallup poll early this week found Biden's average first-year approval ratings are the lowest of all post-World War II presidents, except his predecessor, Donald Trump. Louise Watt reports.
Walking in for a progress report.
Hello, folks.
In a press conference to mark his first year as president, Joe Biden acknowledged Americans had a lot of pandemic-related frustration and fatigue.
It's been a year of challenges, but it's also been a year of enormous progress. We went from 2 million people being vaccinated at the moment I was sworn in to 210 million Americans being fully vaccinated today.
But as the Omicron variant rages, COVID cases and hospitalizations are surging to hit new records. There is also surging inflation, the highest in a generation, which Biden promised to tackle. He also highlighted his achievements, a $550 billion infrastructure plan to rebuild roads and bridges, and the creation of 6 million jobs. But his approval ratings are sliding. A Gallup poll on Tuesday found just 40% of Americans approve of the job Biden is doing, his lowest rating yet. Internationally, his first year will be marked by the chaotic withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan, which contributed to his low ratings. But he took the US back into the Paris Climate Agreement, signaling a commitment to tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. Biden also sounded the alarm at what he called a backward slide of democracy around the world, convening the White House's first virtual Summit for Democracy. He invited countries including Taiwan, but not Russia or China, which he has repeatedly described as the US's top competitor. As he enters his second year in office, another international challenge looms large. Tens of thousands of Russian troops are amassing near Ukraine's borders. Biden says that while he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin doesn't want a full-blown war, he could still launch an incursion into Ukraine.
My guess is he will move in. He has to do something.
Biden says that how the US will react depends on the scale of Moscow's actions. But whatever he does will have repercussions on his standing at home. Chris Ma and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
To take a look at how Biden's first year in office has impacted US relationships in Asia and specifically with Taiwan, I spoke with Peter Van Praag, CEO of Halifax International Security Forum. I started by asking him about the significance of recent visits by US government officials to Asia.
The United States is a Pacific power. It has been in Asia for centuries. I think recent trips to Asia are only reinforcing that message and reminding American partners and allies that the United States is very serious and that it understands its role and its responsibility in Asia. I actually think that the American position is being helped by none other than Xi Jinping, because the more assertive he is. Recently, for example, China went after Lithuanian diplomats because Lithuania was supporting and allowed Taiwan to open an office in Lithuania. And things like this, I think the Chinese side and Beijing might think that they are demonstrating strength. But in fact, what they're doing is bringing the democracies together, with American leadership on issues related to Taiwan.
In terms of the US-Taiwan relationship, do you feel that ties are stronger under Biden?
I do. I think that President Biden understands very well what's at stake with regard to Taiwan. When he was asked at an interview if the United States would come to Taiwan's defense, and he unequivocally said yes. And he invited Taiwan to his Summit of Democracies, which I think very significant for the President of the United States to do. So,
and you mentioned that Biden had said that the US would come to Taiwan's defense. Do you think that the Biden administration is rolling back or softening the US's long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity?
I don't think so. I think that, in fact, when the President of the United States answers a question by saying yes, the United States would come to Taiwan's defense, and the Secretary of State softens it a little bit. And that is the definition of strategic ambiguity.
Do you think the Biden administration is prepared for Russia and China coming together?
I think that some type of alliance between China and Russia is probably overstated. I think that President Putin has certain objectives in Europe and trying to put NATO in an awkward position. We don't know exactly what his end goal is. But Putin himself has to be wary, and is wary, of a China that is a little bit too assertive. I don't think President Putin enjoys being called China's little brother. American power comes from many things, not only its military, but most importantly, from its partnerships and its allies. And what do President Putin and President Xi fear? They fear alliances. And that's why it is so important for the democracies to be working together in a strategic fashion, and nothing concentrates the mind of the United States and its partners and allies than emerging threats.
The US's top diplomat has warned that Russia could double the number of troops stationed at the Ukrainian border at short notice as he kicks off a week of talks in Kiev. Antony Blinken met with Ukrainian leaders ahead of talks with the Russian foreign minister on Friday. The situation at Ukraine's eastern border has become increasingly tense in recent weeks, where security officials estimate some 127,000 Russian troops have gathered. James Chater reports.
The US Secretary of State touches down in Kyiv for a week of knife-edge diplomacy. Antony Blinken reaffirmed US support for Ukraine on Wednesday, but warned Russia could double the number of troops at the Ukrainian border in very short order.
At the same time, we've made very clear to Moscow that if it chooses to renew aggression against Ukraine, it will be met and it will face very severe consequences. And again, that's coming not just from the United States, but from countries across Europe and beyond.
The talks with senior Ukrainian officials come ahead of a pivotal meeting with Russia's foreign minister in Geneva later this week. Amid the quick succession of high-level talks, the Ukrainian president called for calm, but said his country was ready to defend itself.
Україна не хоче війни, але Україна повинна завжди бути готовою до неї. Не боїться, бо захищає свою землю. Не здасться, бо це наша земля, тікати нікуди.
Russia has demanded that the US rule out Ukrainian accession to NATO, a promise Washington says it's unable to make. The diplomatic impasse has led to a spike in tensions, with Ukrainian security officials now estimating 127,000 Russian troops have gathered at the border. And on Wednesday, Russian combat reconnaissance helicopters were seen arriving at a base not far from the border for the first time. Russia, however, continues to deny an invasion is imminent.
We do not want and will not take any action of aggressive character. We will not attack, strike, invade, quote unquote, whatever, Ukraine.
Despite the shadow of the Russian military and rising diplomatic temperatures, residents of Kyiv celebrated the Christian festival of Epiphany this week by taking a dip in the river that dissects the capital. As high-level talks continue, they'll be hoping cooler heads will prevail. Next, Antony Blinken heads to Berlin for discussions with other NATO allies, and that's ahead of the Friday meeting with his Russian counterpart.
I strongly hope that we can keep this on a diplomatic and peaceful path, but ultimately that's going to be President Putin's decision.
The ball, it seems, is now in Moscow's court. Kaohsiung and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
New images have revealed the extent of the devastation to the Pacific island of Tonga, days after a massive volcanic eruption and tsunami. Footage filmed in the capital of Nuku'alofa on Tuesday shows buildings covered with ash and damage to properties and infrastructure. 3 are reported dead, and tsunami waves were sent as far as Peru. Phone lines have only just been restored to the kingdom. Internet services remain down after damage to undersea cables. The UN says about 84,000 people, more than 80% of Tonga's population, have been badly affected by the disaster. Aircraft with humanitarian supplies arrived on Thursday following a massive volunteer effort to clear the airport runway of ash. Meanwhile, Peru says that an oil spill caused by the undersea volcanic eruption in Tonga is an ecological disaster, and it is demanding compensation from the energy company involved. A tanker was offloading oil to a refinery near Lima when unusually large waves triggered by the eruption more than 10,000 kilometers away rocked the ship and caused the spill. Now, Peruvian authorities are demanding compensation from the Spanish energy giant Repsol, which runs the refinery. Officials say the spill has blackened beaches, drenched birds and devastated local marine life in protected zones. It has also affected the livelihood of fishermen who depend on the sea. A spokesperson for Repsol has denied that it should accept responsibility for the incident. Coming up, why one telecaster in Mexico is making headlines. Details after the break.
Taiwan 最有人情味的地方。
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus. For more great news from Taiwan and around the world, download the app TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. Kaohsiung has recorded 3 new local cases of COVID-19, breaking its 5-month streak with 0 infections. The UK government has announced an end to measures in England to control the spread of the Omicron variant of COVID-19. The decision follows falling infection levels in the nation and will take effect from January 26th.
Today marks the start of the next chapter in this country's fight against COVID-19. A few hours ago, the Prime Minister announced, thanks to the progress that we've all made, we will be lifting the Plan B measures and returning to our original Plan A. This is a moment that we can all be proud of. The culmination of a brilliant national mission that helped us to withstand the Omicron wave and restore more freedom to this country. It's a reminder of what this country can accomplish when we all work together.
While individual restrictions will be lifted, the health minister said more variants could yet emerge. He said vaccinations, antiviral drugs and testing are still needed to control the spread of the virus. Not all are in favour of the decision, however. The British Medical Association said the move was not guided by the data and could lead to a resurgence of infections. As nations around the world struggle with rising COVID cases, fatigue from dealing with pandemic restrictions is also growing. In Mexico, where the government has downplayed the severity of the Omicron variant, one TV presenter's response to the latest surge has become an internet sensation.
On live TV from Guadalajara, news presenter Leonardo Schrubbel gave voice to his frustration.
La libertad no te da derecho a fregar al próximo. Ustedes, malditos antivacunas, bola de imbéciles, ya déjense de fregaderas y por lo menos pónganse el maldito cubrebocas y dejen de estar fregando al mundo. Si tú, antivacunas, eres un imbécil, ponte el cubrebocas.
Schrebel's outbursts on Telediario seemed to resonate with many Mexicans who showed their support for him on social media. Mexico has kept its borders open throughout the pandemic, with many people not adhering to mask mandates. The country now faces almost 50,000 new COVID-19 cases a day, fueled by the Omicron variant. The president himself, who has downplayed the pandemic, has contracted the virus twice.
Aquí no estamos hablando de cualquier tema. El COVID mata. Y tenemos que enseñarle a la gente que use el maldito cubrebocas. Pónganselo bien. Es mucho pedir.
Schrebel's passionate response has turned him into a folk hero and earned him international attention and praise. Rick E. and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
COVID lockdown rules have led to protests in various parts of the world. In the Netherlands, protesters took a creative approach to voicing their frustration over the extended lockdown facing the cultural sector. Wei Zhonglu has more.
This could be mistaken for the fanciest hair salon in Amsterdam, but it's actually a protest against COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. One of the city's most famous concert halls briefly opened its doors, offering people haircuts while the orchestra played, in violation of a ban on concerts.
It's so beautiful to be here now in these days when there's no possibility for opening the culture sector. So I like to support it, and I work myself also in the sector. So naturally I want public for the concerts. And that's nice also that my haircut is also done today.
Despite record numbers of new COVID cases, the Netherlands eased a month-long lockdown last week, allowing gyms, hairdressers and shops to reopen. But cultural venues were told to remain closed. So, at the risk of being fined, venues around the country joined the protests, offering Tai Chi and fitness classes, and even manicures against backdrops of famous masterpieces by Van Gogh and Frans Hals.
We're organizing this to make the point that we think the cultural sector should be open. And museums in particular are very safe places to visit. The way we've set this up is also according to the rules. There's plenty of social distancing, there's lots of space, lots of fresh air. And we think we just really don't understand why we're closed and a beauty salon is open at this point.
In a tweeted post, Junior Culture Minister Gunay Oesloe said she understood the cry for help from artists, but she added that opening up is a step-by-step process. But until actions back officials' rhetoric, the Netherlands artists won't be convinced that culture is high on the national agenda. Klein Wang, Wei Zhonglu for TaiwanPlus.
A court in Belgium has sentenced the head of a human trafficking gang to 15 years in prison for the deaths of dozens of Vietnamese migrants trying to reach the UK in a shipping container. Vietnamese national Vo Van Hong was found guilty of manslaughter more than 2 years after the bodies of 39 men and women were discovered in a truck container at a ferry terminal east of London. The migrants had suffocated to death. 17 other defendants were also sentenced to prison terms of between 18 months and 10 years. The court said those convicted are part of a larger network who smuggle people from Vietnam to Britain. A court in Indonesia has sentenced a suspect in the 2002 Bali bombings to 15 years in prison. Aris Sumarsono, better known as Zulkarnain, was a leading member of an Islamist group with ties to Al-Qaeda. He was on Indonesia's most wanted list for nearly 2 decades before being arrested in December 2020. The Bali nightclub attacks were Indonesia's deadliest, killing 202 people from 21 countries. Police and prosecutors accused Zulkarnain of playing a role in making the bombs used in the attacks, but he was not found guilty of direct involvement. He was convicted on charges related to terrorist activities. Air travel disruptions to the US have eased as American telecommunication companies AT&T and Verizon delayed the launch of new 5G wireless services near key airports. In response, Taiwan's national carrier China Airlines and Taiwanese airline EVA Airways have resumed all flights bound for the US. On Wednesday, airlines across Asia, the Middle East and Europe were forced to cancel or reschedule flights to the US at the last minute, affecting thousands of passengers. The chief pilot at a US aviation company explains how the 5G rollout could have interfered with key airplane instruments.
The frequency band that 5G uses is very similar to the frequency band that radar altimeters use. And there's possibility that there's interference or false signals with the 5G and a radar altimeter. So you can, what you would rely on with the radar altimeter giving you a certain altitude above the ground, it may be erroneous based on interference with 5G telephone frequencies.
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. We leave you with pictures of cherry blossoms and a sea of clouds in central Taiwan. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.